Ethical Maze: AI's role in responsible gaming.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is a particularly exciting and possibly slightly conflictive panel as well, in terms of where interests lie in a commercial sense versus a player protection sense, and if those two different factors can indeed cohabit. With me, I have Stephen Aupy from Mindway AI and Niccolò Caramatti from Giochiamo.ai. Stephen, I'll let you introduce yourself.
How you doing, everyone? So my name is Stephen Aupy. I am Business Development Manager for Mindway AI. For the audience who aren't aware of who we are a Danish company and a global leader in customer behavioral monitoring. We work with operators all around the world to help them understand their customer database at a much deeper level. We're also the only company in the world to emulate psychological assessments of human gambling behaviors. We monitor around 13 million players in 64 countries spread over 4 continents. So thanks for having me today, guys.
Thank you very much. Niccolò?
I'm Niccolò Caramatti. I'm the CEO and founder of Giochiamo.ai. We are a fairly newborn company, and we work in the prediction behavioral market for players. So pretty much we analyze every possible data we receive from operators in order to predict players' behavior in terms of gambling addiction. So in terms of when a player is going to be at risk and how to prevent that, how to act timely in order to having the ethical and the right actions to keep the player safe.
Perfect, thank you. And I am Kris Galloway, for anyone who doesn't know me. I'm here from Sumsub. You may recognize the game as the winner of the Best KYC Provider of the Year 2025 at the B2B Sigma Awards on Monday. And yeah, let's kick off. So I think we want to definitely dive into whether there is a conflict and whether or not the commercial side of AI can cohabit with the player protection side. So let's start by asking, where does iGaming regulation stand in relation to the rapid advancement of AI? So we know that different regulators operate at a different pace. There are different priorities. Markets are different, so there has to, by definition, be different priorities. But where do we stand in relation to the iGaming regulators acknowledging the power of AI and being able to keep up with it in such a way as to regulate the industry?
Who wants to start this one? Do you want me to start, or do you want to start this?
Well, I mean, I think being Italian, I'm happy and proud to say that the Italian market is about to face a huge change, because in about less than 10 days, the new licensing model is actually putting the operators in a position of be forced to adopt a model, an AI model, to control the client behavior in relation of gambling addiction. So the regulator made a huge step ahead in terms of what AI can do to protect the players. And I think this is the first regulator doing so, and I expect many to follow. So to answer the question, there is an overlook by the regulators on what AI can do, and at least in terms of gambling addiction. I haven't seen anything yet in terms of what else AI can do in the industry, though.
So do you think that right now in government boardrooms across Italy, there is a conversation happening where one member of staff or one politician is saying to another, guys, AI can turbocharge absolutely everything, and considering the existing gambling algorithms that we have, we need to really take notice of what AI can do, or are we not there yet, in Italy specifically?
In Italy specifically, I don't have the answer about where politicians' opinions stand.
Yeah.
I mean, I know regulator is giving a lot of attention to that, But so action has been taken. I mean, those kind of things don't happen overnight. So this is a huge step. I'm expecting over the course of next year something else to come up. Not so immediately though. Once you raise the attention to what AI can do, it can expand to other, obviously to other sector, to other area of the same industry.
Okay. So
Yes, I've got my own perspective on this question. So over the last, say, 3 to 5 years, 7 years in the gambling industry.
sorry, Stephen, just speak up for me a little.
Yes, sorry, can you hear me better now?
Much better, thank you.
So AI has emerged as an absolute game changer in responsible gambling specifically. In our industry, the biggest application of AI is centered towards responsible gambling and picking up in human gambling behaviors. What we've seen over the last, say, 3 years in particular, is a trend of regulators around the world attempting to modernize their legislative approaches by mandating legislation which alludes to the use of intelligent AI monitoring systems and machine learning systems to address harms. Now, we've seen this trend start in the UK, Netherlands, Germany, and Spain. And then most recently, it's extended in Europe. We're talking about right now to, on the 1st of November this year, Lithuania launched its own regulatory requirements. And I believe by the 16th of November this month, the Italian operators have to get in line. So I'm sure everyone's, it's a busy period in the Italian market. As time goes on, we're probably going to see most markets start to adopt AI globally. I mean, Brazil has mandated AI behavioral monitoring. Like Italy, the regs are very vague. What we can anticipate down the line are guidelines. Regulators are trying to get a grasp on this, and just to be frank and transparent, legislators don't always get it right from the onset, okay? If we look at, well, there's a fine balancing act that happens when a regulator or a legislator must mandate something as intricate as AI behavioral monitoring. And the fine balancing act, like you mentioned, is obviously operators are here to make money, but at the same time, we have to protect the player base. And if you set financial thresholds to a market, you can make it very unattractive. So there's a very fine balancing act on what legislation they mandate. I don't want to go off on a tangent, so I'll leave that there in case this comes back later.
I was going to say, I like how politically correct your frank and transparent comments are. I absolutely agree. I think that I was going to say that we're almost at a crossroads in terms of where AI is in relation to iGaming, but I think it's more of a spaghetti junction than it really is a crossroad. And, you know, AI is that crazy driver coming up in the fast lane, flashing its lights for you to get out of the way. In regards to regulators catching up, until that happens, to what degree do you think we can realistically expect the iGaming industry to self-regulate how AI is being leveraged until that regulation catches up?
I don't believe that self-regulation has ever worked. Like, if we look towards the UK market, the UK being a prime example, self-regulation led to UK becoming one of the most stringently regulated markets at the moment. And then we look towards more of a newer market like the US. Every state in the US has its own legislation / regulations. But from my perspective, self-regulation isn't working very well in the US either. Federal government in the US has expressed an interest of potentially stepping in. So from my perspective, self-regulation doesn't tend to work.
Yeah. So in a moment, I'm going to ask what the regulators would have to do to keep up. But first of all, Niccolò, let me come to you with the same question. Do you believe that there is a parallel universe in which self-regulation could possibly work?
Well, I mean, as opposed to Stephen, I'm pro self-regulation. I think pretty much works because the industry needs to moving forward and adopt as soon as possible the new technologies to offer a better entertainment to the players. And when that goes too far, it's firstly the player to stop himself to use that product. That's what happened in the past in every industry. So regulators comes in when there are some other issues, like responsible gambling is one of them, and you need to put a barrier to what an operator can do without unethical thinking.
Yeah.
But in terms of whatever else the AI can do within the industry, I think is just a change of model. It's like having a huge number of employees that you didn't have before, so that helps the business to improve and to offer a better entertainment. So
Right.
we cannot regulate everything. We don't have to regulate everything. We need to regulate what put consumer at risk, and when consumer cannot understand when they are at risk.
Okay. If we look at problem gambling, for example, though, and we rely on, for example, self-regulation, and we put some of that responsibility on the player themselves, when we take AI into consideration, wouldn't that almost be like giving tax cuts to alcohol companies in a community of alcoholics?
When you say that question, do you mean whilst we're waiting on regulations to come in to govern AI?
I mean that if we, like we have done in the past, rely on self-regulation at the player level, are we not taking a big risk? In the environment we're in at the moment, I can understand why some regulators might think, let's put a degree of responsibility on the end user. But as far as AI is concerned, we know that if there isn't regulation surrounding that, that's going to turbocharge the algorithm in this case.
Okay.
Going to be a dangerous...
So from my perspective and from my experiences, you get proactive regulators, you get reactive regulators. Over the last 2 years in particular, we see the topic of AI and how it's emerged to actually help address problem gambling behaviors through a marketplace. We're getting quite proactive outreach from regulators. They are reaching out to us to understand more about our approach. Like I mentioned earlier, legislators don't always get it right with what they mandate. And what we're actually educating regulators around the world at the moment is to avoid financial thresholds to a gambling marketplace. If you introduce really strong financial thresholds to a market, you make it unattractive for all parties. And when it comes to the top of actually trying to find the correct demographic of problem gamblers, you must understand that people who do need to self-exclude normally do so at the end part of the journey. Normally by this time, they've exhausted themselves mentally, emotionally, but more importantly, financially. So if you introduce financial thresholds to a gambling marketplace, you will still not find the correct demographic of people who need to self-exclude. And what you've inadvertently done is you've made your marketplace very unattractive. So to go back to the German marketplace, €1,000 deposit limit, €1 spins on slots. What's happened over time in the German market, first and foremost, be very unattractive. Secondly, operators have a very generic data set in terms of trying to find problem gamblers and are quite scared to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And they've inadvertently fueled channelization has spiked up, and I've heard it's almost 50-50 in Germany, licensed versus unlicensed. So
Wow.
they need to be very careful in terms of their approach and what they mandate to a marketplace.
I think there are lots of instances, especially with AI, where we need to be very conscious of the Cobra effect and how our actions could inadvertently be fueling.
Exactly.
You get where I'm coming from. So, if I was a regulator now, sitting in front of you guys, and I said, what steps do I need to take as a regulator to keep up with the cutting-edge pace of AI? What would you tell me? And as a supplementary, is it simply understanding it, or is simply understanding the technology enough? Or do we need a more forward-looking regulatory framework so that we can account for what the technology might not be able to tell us at the moment? Niccolò, I'll come to you first.
Well, I mean, obviously, a constant dialogue between regulators and operators is crucial to let the regulator understand what's going on and what's going to be next in order to prevent bad action from operator or to take advantage from a badly written rule, for instance.
Yeah.
So the constant dialogue is like the only way for them, on top of obviously be always on top of new technologies, to to be up to date to what's going on overall, not just in the industry. So it's fairly, I mean, it's not that particularly hard to think that this should be the only way for a regulator to be up to speed.
Yeah.
There will be some situation where there will be a gap between a rule, a new technology, and some bad habits, let's call it.
Yeah.
But as long as the dialogue is in place and constant, this gap will shrink over the course of the time.
So do I understand correctly that you're saying starting off with regular communication, but then as the gap narrows, moving more towards a framework approach?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Stephen, anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I guess from my perspective, regulators, from what I'm seeing in multiple markets around the world at the moment, I don't really like it. There seems to be more of an adversarial relationship between a regulator and the industry instead of a collaborative one. And I think regulators need to keep their finger on the pulse of innovation. When it comes to mandating regulations around something as intricate as artificial intelligence to address human behaviors, I quite like what Brazil has done. We had multiple meetings with the Ministry of Finance last year, and off the back of those meetings, they mandated AI behavioral monitoring to the Brazilian market, which came into effect on the 1st of January. Now, the regulations they've set are extremely vague at this stage, but what that has done for the market is given licensed operators, 6 months to get in line and get their systems ready. Now, what I anticipate is going to happen is they open a public consultation with the industry. Us and others in this space submitted our thoughts. From a Mindway perspective, we give them guidelines based on the failures of more highly regulated markets. And we've advised that they should look into setting legislation which takes into strong consideration granular behavioral monitoring assessments, as opposed to just going for financial thresholds or just creating rule sets. Okay?
Yeah.
So I think a slow and steady pace is the way you should regulate or mandate something as intricate as AI.
So in a way, you're framing the vagueness as a positive because that then gives you the behavioral data that you need to properly refine the regulation.
Well, yes, yeah. Like to go back to proactive regulators, we're in conversation with quite a lot. We've started partnering with gambling regulators as well. Last year, we partnered with the Hellenic Gambling Commission, who oversee the Greek market. We've run a proof of concept with them in that market where they were very interested to understand what the categories of risk could potentially look like in the Greek market. So as time evolves, I do think regulators are starting to get a stronger grasp on what they want to do market-wide with AI specifically.
Sure.
I mean, the DGOJ in Spain came out last month or a month and a half ago, and they're creating their own their own algorithm with their own regulatory requirements in that algorithm, which are quite stringent, to be honest. But as time evolves, I do think regulators will start developing their own kind of systems as well to oversee things market-wide.
Okay. Niccolò, let me come to you with the next question. We know that within iGaming, lots of markets still feel like a Wild West type environment. As far as AI is concerned, it feels like an even wilder West at the moment, just in terms of the data that companies have and their ability to process that and to optimize it for commercial gains. From a player protection perspective, do you think we'll start to see limits on the type of data that AI is allowed to gather on users in future?
Well, that's, again, I mean, if there's no body to force an operator to do that, I don't see why in those, let's call it, unregulated market, that might happen. I mean, that's the role, what I was saying before. I mean, that's the role of a regulator. That's why it's so important when there might be an abuse from the industry towards players, and the players do not recognize that there's that abuse is being in place. So I don't see, like in that case, I don't see a self-regulation unless the operators realize that by keeping the environment, the ecosystem healthy, meaning preventing a player to get into addiction, you actually retain the player longer, and overall you make more money, which is something that for instance, we have been studying, and it actually works. Then it's the industry that is self-regulating because it will simply make more profit. But I don't see otherwise any action that an operator can take just for being ethical. Save some rare cases, but if you decide to operate in a regulated market, it's your choice, and you probably want to take advantage of not being regulated.
Yeah.
So I strongly believe that there will be more regulation and more regulated markets going forward, especially on that aspect.
Yeah. Stephen, let me adapt the question slightly for you. I think what Niccolò said makes a lot of sense, especially in regulated markets with a smaller number of operators, such as France, for example, or Italy or Spain. If we open it up to some other markets, such as Mexico, where we see 60% of operators being gray market operators compared to Sweden, which is 14%, or the UK, which recently doubled from 2 to 4%, do you think that the fact that there is so much competition makes it harder to retain those players through honest and well-meaning practices that revolve around player protection? Or do you think that there's going to be more of a, let's say, cash grab to try and extract as much revenue from the player as possible as early on as possible?
So we work with so many different types of gambling operators. You often find a lot of operators like to move at the pace of regulation. So when they're in, say, grey markets or markets like, countries in Africa or other markets in LATAM where there's very little regulation around responsible gambling, they will come in for the cash grab because it makes sense financially, right?
Yeah.
But as things evolve, I think Brazil has set precedents for one of the most robust regulatory frameworks in LATAM. I don't think there'll be a copy and paste of those regs, but I do believe other kind of emerging markets like Mexico, you just mentioned there, will probably like to try to compete with them in the sense of doing something quite robust, because previous to that, Colombia was the market leader, and there was nothing groundbreaking done in terms of regulation there, right? At the moment, we are in the dog days of AI. The EU AI Act comes into effect next year. Last year, I was at the European Lottery Summit in Warsaw, and I went out for dinner with one of the guys who's actually crafted the EU AI Act. We were discussing algorithms and in-house systems, and he asked me about operator in-house systems. And he said, "What's your thoughts on them?" And I said, "Well, obviously it conflicts with our business, but I don't believe operators are equipped well enough to build correct in-house systems that will adequately address the customer database." When I asked him why he asked me that, he said, "Where's the third-party governance?" And I said, "There isn't one unless they get audited." So, yeah, we very much are in the dog days. It'll be interesting to see if that's taken into consideration next year. So
Interesting. We're going to come on to a question in regards to the conflict that you touched upon just now. But first of all, I'd just like to say, if anybody would like to ask any questions, please just scan the QR code that's on screen. We have just over 6 minutes left, so we'll come to them as soon as you ask them. So going back to the conflict that we discussed, do you think that the proper and ethical implementation of AI for responsible gambling, for player protection, is essentially at odds with the commercial implementation of AI for revenue optimization specifically? Niccolò, I'll come to you first there.
Well, that's again goes back to how rules are written. So what are the constraints and what are the space that an operator can navigate in? I mean, AI is a very, misused word right now. I mean, it can be pretty much everything. But so far, for what I've seen, I mean, the only regulation has been done towards, players' protection, and even that it wasn't that clear how. I mean, the regulator was fairly vague. As I said in the very beginning, it's just the first step. So I don't think that is going to stop from operators to use AI in other parts of the business, if that was your question. And I don't think that is going to change the way the operators will work in respect of what the regulator is asking for responsible gaming. I think AI is a huge opportunity for operators to improve their offer. I said that again before, and that shouldn't be stopped because that will give a better experience to players. And I'm not concerned about the correct usage of players' data, because as long as that is being again regulated as it is already right now with GDPR, for instance. So keeping the player anonymous, so you can use the player's data to improve their experience, and that will not cross the rules implemented for gambling protection. And so I'm positive in saying that there will be a good combination of the two.
Okay, so Stephen, I'll come to you the same question, just with a little sprinkling of controversy, if I may. You know as well as I do that there are operators who pride themselves on player protection. There are also operators who try to hide the RG features. Where do you see the conflict going? Because it's almost a direct head-to-head competition in terms of, are we going to use this for good, or are we going to use this for revenue? Just very quickly, if you could, because we have two questions from the audience.
Are you talking about licensed versus unlicensed in a sense?
No, in the absence of licensing, basically, in the sense of being able to leverage the capability of AI to protect your players or to enhance revenue.
Because we've only got 3 minutes, it'll be very quick. But at this stage, if you are not using AI to address the player base for compliance, you're at a strategic disadvantage. So if you're not using AI at the moment, you could expect your competitors to have more market share as things develop, because the personalization of AI is actually working very well for different facets of the industry. But for responsible gambling, personalized communications to address player behaviors to create more of a sustainable gambler behavior across an entire marketplace is what's slowly happening right now. So
Love the answer. Okay, gentlemen, we have about 15 seconds each, and we have 3 questions from our audience. So first of all, from an anonymous writer, what worries you more, biased AI decisions or data misuse in the name of responsible gambling? And what would you say the solution would be? Niccolò, I'll come to you first.
Well, as long as the framework we mentioned at the beginning is clear, and operators are, acting as the regulator wants. I don't see, there's nothing that worries me, because we're talking about responsible gaming. We already have, operators already have information and data. So, AI can help them to protect the players, but they can already use AI for other, for marketing tools. But I don't see anything related to what they are forced to do by the regulator. So it doesn't worry. I'm not worried that AI is being used for responsible gaming and then it can be misused. If the question probably is, are we worried that operators can misuse AI, generally speaking? That's a different question. Okay. But the answer is, it goes back to the individual operator. Then.
Okay. Stephen, is there a concern of AI bias there for you?
Yeah, my worry would be in-house systems being used unethically. Some operators from some of the conversations we've had have asked us if we can change the categories of risk, which the answer is no, of course. So in-house systems, you don't have that third-party governance. So in-house systems would be worrying to me from that perspective.
Okay, let's move on to the next one from Marina. Hello, Marina, wherever you are. I love this question. Should regulators have access to an operator's AI models and data training methods, or would that be crossing a line?
That's definitely crossing a line.
It would be crossing a line.
But the regulator should do his job, meaning making clear rules for the operator to work, fulfilling what is the meaning behind those rules. I mean, it should not babysit the operator. So definitely that's crossing the line, I think.
Okay. We have 1 second left, but I think let's get through these if we can, or until we get kicked out, one or the other. I saw you nodding along. Do you agree, or do you have anything to add to that?
You know what? I think regulators just need to be in contact with licensed operators a lot more frequently. In the UK GC are going through a lot of operators at the moment. We have a lot of operators coming to us saying, UK GC are on our ass. We need you guys to come in and have a conversation. And what do you think of our in-house model? And
Yeah.
they're the kind of conversations I'm having at the moment. So I think they're crossing the line if they're looking for access to operators' AI models, but like I think they need to have more of a stronger line of communication, more frequent audits.
Okay, perfect. Mike, I'm sorry we can't get to your question. They've removed them off of the board. I think they're trying to hint at something that maybe we should be finishing up the session. Niccolò, Stephen, thank you very, very, very much for attending.
Thank
It's been
you.
a pleasure. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And yeah, hope any more of the
Thank you very
same.
much, everyone.
Let's take a photo, guys.
What
Thank
What a sizzling hot topic and what a fantastic panel. Could we give another massive round of applause to Kris, our moderator, Stephen, and Niccolò? Thank you so much.